Okay, so uh, yeah, the class nation is going to be defined within the header file, and then any complex, I would say, member functions are going to be defined in the CPP file. So for example, in the nation file, we're going to have this particular, every particular nation is going to be of class nation. So we're going to have to figure out how to write this nation to essentially a string so that we can then save it to our JSON file. Inside of the nation class, what we can do in the public is standard. I'm assuming it's going to be a standard string, and this string is going to return a concatenated string, the index, capital, OIO, and name. That doesn't make sense though, because a JSON structure in and of itself can be nested. It can hold nested data structures. So I think my goal here is to figure out how to print this, export it in a way, and we'll define it in the header file in a bit. Export export data. Actually, we'll just call it export. All right, we can call it export, and we'll define it here. And this is going to return something. I don't know what it's going to return, but we'll just return string for now. In its class, what we can do is standard string. It's returning a standard string for now. We're going to call this function export. And all it has to do is export its own data. Is it because it's a key? I'll just do test here. Oh, okay, gotcha. Export is a, okay. So let's just do export data. And this is going to be called export data. Oops. Export data. Oh, interesting. I think export is a keyword. That's why it wasn't letting me, it was recognizing it as a keyword. Okay, so nation is going to have export data, and this is going to return some kind of string structure. And actually, no, this is not going to return a string structure. This needs to return each nation's data so that we can then save it to a JSON file. And for that, I think what we can do, potentially return a struct and then save these struct into the JSON nested fields. So what I think I'm aiming for in data is, let's create this JSON game state, and we'll just call it 0 for now. It's going to be a JSON file, and then the JSON file is going to have this structure. At least this is what I'm aiming for. This is going to have nations as an entry, and then for each nation, this is going to be a list of nations. Nation 1, and then this is going to have, oops, this should be in quotes, and this item is going to have within it the name with the string. Keep forgetting, name with the string. It's going to have the capital, and then whatever number, 200 as an example. And then the same for OIO. This would have, I don't know, 20 for now. So nation 1 would have its name, its capital, its OIO. This should also contain its index so that it knows that all the other data structures also have data associated with this particular nation. So we'll call this data index. This one is a comma. No, nation 1. Actually, I don't think I need this one here. Do I? No, yeah, I do. It's a JSON. What am I missing here? Nation One block. Colon expected. Colon expected. Colon expected? There's a colon. Oh, this guy. Data index. Let's just say this is index 0. And I'm thinking that index 0, it's going to be the user. The user's index is always going to be 0. Well, players that are real players are going to be the initial indexes, and then after that, it'll be the AI nations. But for now, what I'm thinking is something like this. And then let's bring the nation H file over here. We have the capital, we have the oil, we're capturing the index. I think that should be it for now. So this would be the initial block, and this would contain all the nations that are currently on the board. And then I'm thinking of having the other data structures. Right, this would be data. Battle, right? Yeah, battle. Battle data or something like that. And this would have its own array with the amount of units, and that's going to have some kind of format defined to it. So now that the game state, what we're aiming for each nation to have, we already developed a couple entities. The first is game state, which is going to contain the vector of the nations and all the other standard vectors for the entire game state. We are going to create an export data function, which has the standard exporting data file character out string, and then the class defined within the header file, game state manager and game state manager header. So inside of the header file, we'll define the game state manager. I cleared out the game state manager CPP because we're going to define the heavy logic in there. So far, we're going to have not game state nations. We're going to go ahead and delete this because this is only going to be game state lowercase. This is going to be just game state. This game state manager holds this object here. That's a struct that contains all the state of the game. The game state manager is going to have to do three things, right? The first is handle the new game, so initialize a new game. So for this game state manager, we can run, this is going to have to return a game state struct, and we're going to initialize the game state. This is essentially a new game. Actually, that might be a better initialize new game. And in this function, we are most likely going to have to take in the number of nations that should be initialized, the init capital for each nation, and the init oil for each nation. We'll probably have to add a couple more inputs to this, depending on what kind of other feature settings we need to initialize for a new game. But for now, at least for this test harness, the initial test harness setup that we have, it'll be a simple new game. This guy also has to export game state, and in this function, I'm thinking that it is most likely going to have to save the game state to a JSON file, the JSON file that we defined previously. And then most likely this is going to also return a game state because we need another function that is capable of loading the game state, and this is going to come from a path to the game file, which is a JSON holding the state. All right, so we'll need these three functions, And I don't know which should go in public and which should go in private. Yeah, so we'll keep these all in public for now, and then define any private members. Once we get this all tested out and go on, but for now, let's close these couple of files. So we have the game state manager header defined. Now let's jump into the game state, put this header file on the side. And what we're gonna do is copy this function. Well, let's start with its own on the top. Copy this function, and actually we don't need the brackets at the end here because we're just defining it, or declaring it. We're just declaring it, sorry, not defining it. We're just defining these here, but we have to implement their definition in the corresponding CPP file. So we'll have to include in here the game state manager header file so that we can use the game state manager namespace, and we're gonna first initialize the new game. So this has to return the game state. Game state manager initialize new game, and this is going to take in all of our parameters from our function. And let me close this because let's say cancel, save it, close. It's taking way too much real estate there. So we'll go ahead and implement this. And in here, what we're gonna have to do is iterate through the num nations, and we're gonna have to create a nation for each index. And then we're going to have to implement the save state, right? So game state manager, we need a semicolon here. We're gonna have to export the game state. This is our save condition. It doesn't take any input, and all this is going to do is save the game state to the JSON file, semicolon, and then we have to implement the load game state manager load game state, and this needs a standard or stud. I've heard people say stud too. Stud string for the path to the game file. Right? Okay, so these are the three contexts. What I'm going to do here is do a quick standard or stud character out. Character out. This is going to say that it's initializing game with new line stud character out nations. We'll throw in the count of nations, and then we'll do a new line here, stud character out nations oil capacities is set to an init oil, new line, then stud character out capital with a start capital of init capital. New line. So now we have this initialize new game that all it's going to do is throw to the terminal, push to the terminal the initial conditions for the new game. Now let's jump back into the harness. So in main CPP we have a simple harness, and the initial test that I want to run is the new game test. And instead of saying hello from Faceline, which is our working title for this Forex game engine, we are going to call this, what are we going to do? We need to first set up the number of nations, the capital, starting capital and starting oil for each nation. And then we're going to build it and call the different objects, initial and game state, and call the game state manager to essentially start initializing this initial version and start bringing the simple Forex game engine back to life. So int, we're gonna need num nations, and we're gonna initialize this to 0. Actually, we'll just do 5 for now, right? Because what we need to do is test all the other components, all the other objects that are going to be created. So we're going to need number of nations. We're going to need init capital for each nation, and we'll just call this, I don't know, 2000 capital or 2000 gold or something. Init oil, and each nation is going to have 5000 oil. And we're going to keep it there for now. Names and all of that, most likely I'm going to have some kind of other like JSON file or something with default names for each of the nations, but for now we can leave that empty. And inside of this new game test, in this testing harness, we are going to need to import a couple of our defined, actually, I just need the game state manager header file. This will allow us to create an initial instance of the game state manager. This is game state, we'll do, okay, game state manager. And game state I don't think I am, do I have a constructor for this guy? In the header file, we don't have a constructor yet. So let's create a quick constructor for game state manager. And in game state manager, all we want to do, at least for now, just this character out game state manager init initialized. We'll do a new line here, block that off. So whenever that game state manager is initialized, it'll initialize as this. So back in the test harness, we'll instantiate the game state manager, and then the game state manager is going to initialize. Is it because it's an object? Dot, there we go. Initialize new game with num nations, with init capital, and init oil. Okay, we haven't called nations anywhere or initialized that vector yet, but what this is going to do is initialize our first game state manager with this new game, which should just character out these couple items, and what we're going to do is build our project just to make sure we're not making any egregious errors so far. So what we're going to do is to make clean to clear everything out. We're going to run a make all. There we go. Include state manager header file. Okay, for these errors, I'll probably just look at them from the top and go down. So game state manager, no such file or directory. And this is in main CPP. So we open up main CPP. That is outside of, one. What is it? One. Yes, it's one directory and it's inside of systems. So if we go up to here, this should be in systems / game state sys / game state manager.h. That should resolve. Nation.h. Let's see, completion terminated. Starting from the top, we have message file directory. I suspect all of our structures are going to be similar like that. So if you jump into game state manager, header file, this nation needs to be from, I'm assuming, I don't recall how to add include paths. So far, I don't want to use relative paths for the includes. So what I want to do is figure out exactly how to add these header files. And if we take a look at the build file for the sources, I've already added any CPP file that's inside of systems, inside of entities, inside of battle sys, inside of game state sys. And what I'm thinking is, at least for this initial test, what I want is to initialize just simple init variables and then pass them along to the initialized new game of the game state manager. And up here, this is obviously not, it had this. Interesting. Ideally, we should just be able to do this. Game state manager, include the game state manager header file inside of the CPP. But more likely than not, we are going to need to figure out how to include these paths inside of our VS Code window. Please update your include path. This guy needs to be updated. Dependency of game state manager.h. Game state manager header is having issues with entities, and I don't want to do this because entities, this game state manager is in the same level as entities, and they would have to go back once, go into entities, and go into nation.h, the header file, to import it. If we jump back into the main, let's start with this guy. What is this? Include errors detected. Please update your include path. Okay, so we do new problem, quick fix, edit include path settings. This is the one that I was looking for, because we can add different paths of where we're going to add these different files. Workspace folder. Here, include path is a folder that contains header files such as include myheader.h that are included in a source file. Specify a list of paths, for instance, the IntelliSense engine, for the IntelliSense engine to use while searching for included header files. Searching on these paths is not recursive. Specify ** to indicate recursive search. For example, workspace recursive will search through all subdirectories. Workspace folder will not. If on Windows, we're not on Windows, we are on Linux. So this is the one we have to update. And I don't know if Workspace resolves to the PWD, because PWD right now is Home Euromeld Development Sandbox. So inside of Sandbox we have this Forks game engine source code, the source code, right? So we need to figure out if Workspace resolves to PWD, right? Workspace or any folder within PWD. So it doesn't resolve to it. So if we were to add a path, if we were to add the path of our source folder and then add recursive, so let's do copy path, we'll add the path / recursive to find all the header files. We'll save that. This is Linux. Okay, so go back here. Includer is detected. Please update your include path. Squiggles are disabled for this translation unit. Cannot open source file. Entities. Nations dependency of. Okay, so Game State Manager is still not happy. Why is it not happy? Game State Manager. This one is probably the one that's complaining. So resolvenation.h, we already included the path to this source folder and then added the 2 stars for recursive search, which means that should be resolved. I shouldn't see any issues. So okay, yeah, that I think resolved the issue. So far to run a quick make all. Ooh, okay, probably getting a lot of errors. Yep, this is not happy. This is not happy at all. Okay, so in constructor, nation standard string int, which is our constructor for the nation, will be initialized after int m data index, int member data index. So if we jump over to our nation class definition, what I'm thinking about is the order, because clearly the error indicates that the initialization order is the issue. So that tells me that the order in which these are defined could be an issue. And you know what, if I'm not doing anything in the destructor, I don't know if I should just delete it. I'm just gonna delete it for now. But in particular, for each nation, I don't think these are even gonna change at all. Right, because the nation names once it's set, and the data index once it's set, these shouldn't change otherwise. It's gonna mess up the. It's actually gonna mess up the game later on, the game state. So I'm just gonna move them up to the private access identifier, and I'm wondering if setting these at the top is going to define them first. So you have capital. But what if this order also matters, right? If we add the capital, actually before I do that, I am going to put these at the top in this particular order. Then the constructor, I'm not going to follow this order because I don't know what the initialization order is for these parameters, these member parameters, but I do know that these shouldn't change, just like the capital and the oil. At least not directly. They shouldn't be public now that I think about it. So we're going to grab these setters and we're going to duplicate them. Oops. We're going to grab these setters and we're going to duplicate them. And this way I can create one for, what's it called? Capital Oil, we have nation name, set nation name. This is going to take in a standard string, nation name, which means the member nation name is going to be assigned whatever nation name is given to it. This is going to set oil. I'm not going to set oil anymore. Oh, actually, set capital, set oil, set nation name. And then we are going to delete these because we don't need these. So we set the nation name, and now we need to set the data index. This is going to be an int data index. And we're going to assign the member data index to data index. And then we're going to need another another set actually, of getter functions. One for get nation name. It's going to return the member nation name, the member nation name, and then it's going to, why are you complaining? No suitable conversion function for standard string. Oh, this should return std string. And then this is get data index for this particular nation, return member data index. Okay, so setters and getters are updated for the nation class. Now up here, we're going to push these into private. Deleted the constructor just because I have no idea if I even need to implement that. Keep that there. I do remember that there's a way to more efficiently pass this some of these inputs. Like there's by value, I think, and there's by reference or something like that. We'll get into that a little later on. For now, I just want this to be simple. It's probably gonna be slower. It's probably gonna be more copies of most likely this input variable, but for now that's not the priority. The priority is building successfully. So we're gonna open up this terminal. Go to clear this out. Make clean to clean up our stuff up. I'm gonna make all. Okay, let's see. Okay, we're still getting initialization errors. And this is for M data index and then capital. Nation name is fine. Data index and then capital. What if it is that? What if it is this order of initialization? So if we were to add this capital down here, we'll add oil to the bottom. If this order really matters, that is going to be a learning experience for me. That's going to be a learning experience. Okay, make all. Oh man, it is. Okay, those errors are gone. Okay, recap. I was struggling with this make all command. I was trying to build and the nation class was complaining about initialization order. The biggest issue that I was coming across is that the order that you define the member variables, the member properties, is going to matter if you have a constructor that also has a list initialization for this particular constructor for this class, which means that this list of initialization variables has to match the order, your order of your member properties. I'm assuming that this order also has to match. So good practices is define the variables, the member variables, the member properties. Make sure that the order is also reflected in the inputs for the constructor and then the initialization list for the constructor. That seems to have solved the initialization errors. Now, these two errors, no such file or directory for nation.h, could be because I'm missing, let's see, and this is in Game State Manager. So let's open up Game State Manager. We'll delete, we'll close these files, not the configuration because I might have to jump back in there. But this guy is nowhere to be found. So I'm wondering if I can do systems / entities / nation.h. Systems is already in. Include past squiggles. That's not gonna work. Yeah, that's not gonna work. It's not giving me squiggles here. So if we make all, let's see. And it's Game State Manager for both nation.h and Game State Manager header for Game State Manager. It's for nation. Oh, okay, gotcha. It's the same file. And both nation.h and oh, it's the main CPP file. That's what's missing. Okay. Which means something in my include path could be off then. Jump into configuration. We'll close this. Actually, before I close that, currently in my include paths, I have this line to the source. But what if I add a path to sys / recursive? And you know what? I'm even thinking adding it to the entities cursive just for now, see how that behaves. C standard. Let's push this to C20. Oh, it's not in there. We'll push this to C ++20. That is set. Go ahead and clear this. Make clean to clean up after ourselves. We're gonna make all. Still can't find it. Okay, no such file or directory. Nation.header. Oops. Game State Manager. I'm not getting red squiggles. Okay, so I don't understand why I'm still getting the issue with directories with this no such file. I'm getting this error with the error. Okay, this error is not finding these two header files. What I'm thinking about is, I guess tracking is the build. Something that I'm looking at here is the build. I don't know if maybe
this flag here could be telling the build something about the include files. So what if it is that? Okay, so let's go back into the make file. Let me close this to have a bit more room to go through this. And I know we have this include file, but I don't know how this affects the build. And if I were to, let's see where this is being used exactly, because I can see it in that command there. Right, and if we scroll down, this is where it pops up, and this is the command that we can see that's being essentially defined here. The flags, which includes that in this thing -I include. And then there's include dependencies. That's pretty much it. I wonder if this flag here and this path to the include expects the header files potentially that we're creating to be stored in here. Is that how that works? Well, I guess a good test that I can run is maybe get rid of these. We'll get rid of that flag there. And then we can get rid of this line and then build that. Let's see how that behaves. So let's scroll this up here. We'll clear this out. We'll clean it up. And then we'll run a make all command. That's still, okay, the include is not there anymore. But there's still no such file or directory found. So if I were to go to the game state manager that imports nation, can I now do entities / it's complaining with no / and then make all. Oh no, that doesn't track. Still getting the issue. And the relative imports, does that work? Relative imports is not even, oh, nation.h is gone. Relative imports looks like it's working. And the game state, if I were to, okay, let me just add the game state manager. Where is that at? How level? Game state manager is here, and entities contains the game state. So what if we do back one entities? Come on, you. Oh, yes. Entities game state.h. Okay, game state manager. It's just still there. Game state manager. Oh, well, I'm not using relative imports. Okay, let me run this with relative imports for the time being, and then this is for the game state manager include. Okay, hold on. Make clean, make all. Game state is still a problem, which is this one. Entities, game state H. I'm just switching everything over to relative imports now, and then we can figure out how to not use relative imports. What I'm aiming for here is a clean build, a good build. Okay, good. So making progress. Return statement and function. Oh, that's right, because there's a couple of functions that we created that I believe, yeah, we're expecting something to be returned, but we're not returning anything. And this eventually will return the game state object. So let's switch over to having game state manager, that particular function, just return void. And actually, now that I think about it, I haven't created this game state for these functions. So let's temporarily swap these over to void. My goal is to build successfully, and then on the next go around 3, we can go through and start adding a bit more logic to these pieces here. But for now, we'll have those return void. We'll jump over to the nation CPP, make sure that this is also returning void, at least for now. Get nation name, we're not using it, and then actually it is returning a standard string, and that should be fine. Okay, let's figure out, see if that fix those issues. Okay, do in void games in member void load game state string unused parameter path to game file. Okay, so there are inputs that I'm not using. How about we do this? Let's jump into the make file. We'll remove the flags. I want to remove all of them. These are the warnings that are being treated as errors. So what we can do is, for this particular run build, remove these flags, make clean, make all, and now we have, okay, let's see, it's kind of hard to tell. What you mean is to make clean to make clean them up, make all to build it. Oh, it's the main. Here we go. So for the main, we can go into systems. Is it at the same level? I think it is at the same level. Let me double check. Main, yeah, systems. Oops. Systems, game state, is it? It'll be in systems, game state sys, / game state manager .h. Make clean. Make all. Okay, now let's go back to here to this build. I don't know if it's built or not. Let's do a check real quick. Apps baseline 0. Build apps baseline 0. Boom. Initializing game with nations 5,000 with oil, but 2,000 for their capitals. 2 things. The first is we remove the flags that treats warnings as errors. And treating warnings as errors is what we want for good practices. Right now, we have to figure out how to fix the include so that we don't have to use relative paths to these header files, because I don't want to use relative paths. I don't think that's a good habit to have. So far, for this particular episode, we've set up the initial test harness to be able to use the game state manager to initialize a new game. We have not implemented or used the nation object or instantiated any of those objects yet. The next steps, I think we're going to be focusing on, at least for the next episode, we're going to be focusing on figuring out how to save the game state, these vectors, to that JSON structure that we were working on initially. So this is the goal. We'll have multiple nation game states for their resources to capture those, and we're going to tackle that in the next episode and see how far we can get. For now, I think this is a good spot to pause and push this out up to the GitHub. You can call that a day for this session. Last thing we can do is get what branch am I on? We are on episode 2 game state, git add --all. Actually, before I add this, I'm gonna make a running node. So in the readme down at the bottom, pick up on. We're gonna pick up on fixing the include paths. Make sure that the member functions are returning what they need to return. We switched over a lot of them to just return void for now, just to get the build going, making sure that everything else was fine. Re-add. We're gonna re-add the treat warnings as errors flags in the build. And then we're gonna figure out how the include -i works in the make file. Okay, that works. Sweet. We'll get -all, git commit -m, finished building a skeleton for the test harness. Boom, git push that up, and then in the next episode at the beginning we can merge that into develop, switch over to develop, and then branch off for the third episode. And I think we're good. I think we're good for now. I'm feeling good. We made some really good progress, and little by little for myself, I'll start getting a bit more familiar with these objects and classes and how these should be properly structured, and figure out how these freaking includes work. But for the most part, thank you guys for joining me. I appreciate all the support, and a quick shout out as of right now, those 10 followers, appreciate you guys. iScopes, thanks for the pointers, man. Once we get to those units, that unit section, to start developing those units, we're gonna have to rethink potentially the approach, starting off with just that single unit as a start, and then if it goes well, then we can obviously expand and add those other units that I initially wanted to. And then we also have to consider how we're going to represent the map, right? The map for this 4X game, which is also exciting. So thank you so much. I'll catch you guys later. This is Neuromeld.